Introversion and extraversion are two of Jung's most influential concepts, both coined in 1921. They are, however, some of Jung's most misunderstood ideas. Popular usage of the terms has strayed far from Jung's original conception of them. The words have become associated with social shyness or outgoingness as a result of Hans Eysenk's work. Jung's original conception points to something significantly more foundational, nuanced, and richly informative about the nature of the psyche. Introversion is defined by Jung as such. Everyone whose attitude is introverted thinks, feels, and acts in a way that clearly demonstrates that the subject is the prime motivating factor and that the object is of secondary importance. For the introvert, the internal world is prioritized over the external one. Subjective factors have priority over objective factors. The world is understood through the lens of the subject, rather than the subject being understood through the lens of the world. Jung makes it clear that the introvert is aware of objective factors, but the subjective factors are the decisive ones. But doesn't this mean introversion is essentially selfish? Isn't it self-centered, naive, and problematically idealistic? Doesn't introversion cultivate ignorance and maladaptation to the external world? This viewpoint is recognized by Jung as an expression of extraverted bias. It assumes that the extroverted attitude is more correct than the introverted one. In fact, there's such a bias against the subjective attitude that it's even influenced the way we use the word subjective. The comment, "well, that's subjective," is often said to dismiss. Cultural paternal values typically prioritize a pragmatic, realistic, and scientific extroverted attitude over the stereotyped, idealistic, daydreaming introverted attitude. At the same time, qualities such as principled wisdom and knowledge that appearances can be deceiving are examples of introverted paternal cultural values. Neither introverted nor extroverted attitudes are inherently bad. It's only when they're used in an imbalanced way that they can lead to neurotic behavior. The main problem with an extroverted bias is that it overlooks the necessity of subjectivity. What we take as objective, our perception of the world external to us, can only be accessed via a subject. There must be a subject in order to perceive an object. Furthermore, and this is the key point here, all subjects come with a contentful subjectivity. Every perception is coloured by one's subjectivity. Subjectivity cannot be disentangled from any object. Doing so would involve stepping outside of subjectivity, which is of course impossible. Subjectivity can only be denied, and to unfortunate effect. As Jung says, by overvaluing our capacity for objective cognition, we repress the importance of the subjective factor, which simply means a denial of the subject. Jung notes it's just as possible for an introvert to harbour extraverted bias as it is for the extrovert. Whether it's from imbalanced integration of cultural paternal values, or from an overcompensation turned neurotic, an introversion's repression of their introversion will be to their own detriment. So, what does this mean for us? It can help us understand how our judgments, conflicts, and misunderstandings are the result of psychological makeup. To an extrovert, an introvert may appear selfish, naive, and idealistic. What the extrovert may miss is that those judgments are a product of their relationship to their own extraversion and introversion, and not just a result of the introvert. Now we can look at the pitfalls of introversion without succumbing to an extraverted bias. As the extrovert recognizes, the pitfalls largely arise due to a lack of adequate compensation from the extroverted attitude. Escape into fantasy and distaste of reality are both indications of uncompensated introversion. Excessive development of introversion doesn't result in better use of it. Psychic health cannot just be maintained by one's introverted relationship with oneself. It must account for one's extroverted relationship with the world. In attempting to correct this, the introvert may go too far the other way by developing an overcompensated extroverted attitude. This brings with it the problems that come with denying one's psychic nature and psychic life. Uncompensated introversion is balanced by acknowledgement and integration of the extroverted attitude, rather than by denial and abstinence from it. Alternatively, the introvert can go too far in the opposite direction, deifying the internal world while dismissing the external world. Subjective factors are not just prioritized over extroverted ones, they are held as superior to them. Subjective factors are always right, extroverted ones always wrong, or at least very nearly always. This manifests in a rigidity of judgment, selfishness, and megalomania. Jung attributes neurotic introversion of this type to identity of the ego with the self, also known as ego inflation. Edinger sums up inflation very well. It is a state in which something small, the ego, has aggregated to itself the qualities of something larger, the self, and hence is blown up beyond the limits of its proper size. However, Jung makes it clear that introversion isn't limited to what is conscious. Introversion is oriented to the psyche as a whole, to the self, the conscious, the unconscious, and the collective unconscious. In this way, the introvert is more susceptible to influence from archetypes, which are the symbols and images that derive from the collective unconscious. This unconscious influence manifests as strong preferences and opinions, which can lead to the previously described neurotic, inflexible introversion. As always, Jung's work prompts us to self-reflection. How is my relation to the psyche and the internal world? Do I harbour extraverted bias? Who in my relationships has introverted or extroverted thinking? Is my extraversion undercompensating or overcompensating? Has introversion led to ego inflation? If you enjoyed this video and would like me to take more walks through Jung's work, a like or comment is much appreciated. Thank you.